Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we are checking out the PSP E27. I want to show you with some test tones how this thing works, because it can be a little crazy sometimes working with it. You might move the drive, like for example, I have here a 100 hertz tone, and you might move the drive. There it is. You might expect there to be harmonics, but then there's nothing. But check this out. This really threw me. If you go to mid-side, you suddenly get harmonics and the drive does stuff despite, nothing over here being on. Turn it off, nothing. If you add in a movement, let's go down to where it actually is at like 82 hertz. Then you get your drive. Here's the mid-side. Completely different drive. So we're going to be looking at that, that kind of stuff. It really threw me for a little bit to get used to exactly how this thing works. So it is an analog modeled plugin. Specifically, it's modeled after a real E27. The company that makes the hardware version has given their blessing to PSP because their plugin version is so good. Once we go over a little bit on how these controls work, one of those was the drive control, so that when you move it, you're actually doing something. Then we're going to dive into a little bit more creative of an example, because there is support for mid-side, which you saw a little bit, and you can have two of these E27s. We're going to use it to spice up a bass. So just to start off, again, we have a test tone. Now a sine wave input test will only show you so much with an analog modeled thing, because it's just one sine wave at a particular loudness. So it's not going to be indicative of what it would respond to, like say if you had a vocal or something with a lot of harmonics coming in. But it can be a useful thing to understand. So one of the things is, if you are on just a regular left-right mode and you have the drive up and everything is off, an important note here, everything's off, it doesn't do anything, at least for a sine wave. It might respond differently if you give it something else, but the drive will do little to nothing. If we give it something with more harmonics, like a saw wave, turn it up, not a whole lot of change there. In this case, you need to have a filter move active for it to matter. So for example, and let's go back to a sine wave real quick, just to show you. When you send in harmonics, the classic distortion kind of overdrive type of thing you would imagine is it adds additional harmonics above it. It generates these harmonics as a result of the distortion, because it's typically wave shape driven. And if you do an FFT on that, you get these additional shapes. So nothing should appear below the harmonic that's generating these additional partials or harmonics that are above it, or overtones. They might not be harmonically related. We shouldn't see anything appear below it. So in a sine wave's case, let's put it up a bit higher, like 400. If we add in this drive, and let's give it something around 4, let's give it 370. There's our lowest one though. Now, I know you can't really see it here because of the scale that I have this right now. It's linear scale, but you don't see anything below it. So that's the first thing. The next thing is you saw, if you add mid-side, this drive control becomes influential. So just be aware of that when you're working with it. It can be a little confusing if you're like, oh yeah, I want to drive the signal. You turn it on and then you start moving it, and then nothing happens because it's tied to these controls, but in mid-side it works a little bit different. The next thing over here on the side, I guess we should really quick cover, is you're able to have two of these E27s, these EQs. You hit the ×2, and then you have the ability to have this drive unit, but you don't have to. The default actually doesn't have it on by default, I don't think. Let's go to the default. It's just the two sides. So just so you're aware of that, mid-side mode is right here, and then this is the monitors that allows you to hear the different signals, so you can hear everything together, just the left, just the right, the mid channel, or the side. This is just monitoring the output. So we're going to leave it right now on everything. And down here at the bottom of this drive control, we're given three of these controls are really interesting. One's just a polarity flip, so nothing that crazy. This is the high frequency enhancement button, and what it does is it just boosts the high end, but it does it in this sort of analog modeled kind of way. So it's got a little bit of the magic. Who knows what it's doing there, but it's definitely pumps up the high end some. And usually what that means is when you drive it hard, it still sounds good. It doesn't sound like digital clipping. So if we give it something with some high harmonics, we'll give it a saw wave. You can see it actually darker. Right. Things like hi-hats, maybe the high-end portion of a snare, the snap of a kick, those kinds of things could benefit from this. Could turn it on, could leave it off. If you want it brighter, push it. The other thing down here we have, these are actually bypass buttons. So you notice this light turns green. These ones turn red. And this is to turn off parts of the modeling. Now, one of these, specifically the op amp modeling, I have found to have a dramatic impact usually. And then much more rarely, I'll find the transformer modeling to play a role. But usually I don't notice much of a difference whether or not this is on or off. But this one is the big one. And the whole idea is you can bypass these if you want cleaner filters, if you're doing something like on the master bus or something. So if we go ahead, hit play, and let's bring the distortion up and give it like some beefy boost down here. Bypass this. And this is something that's a little more obvious when we pick, oh, that's also, we're at 400. It's going to be part of the reason we don't hear it so good. So that's with it enabled. So let me really quick show you with a sine wave. So here's a sine wave. All these harmonics generated. We're back to just the one. So now if we do a dramatic cut or a boost, it pretty much affects just the one thing. And it's a much more pure process or clean. So that's the gist of how this kind of works. I want to move over to actually doing something cool and musical with it. In this case, I'm going to be a little bit more creative. So I'm going to do something other than just, you know, touching up a kick or fixing some audio. And by the way, these filters, they're very broad. And so if I give it something with a lot of harmonics, like say a saw wave, and let's bring it down so that the harmonics occur a little bit closer up. We'll give it like a 60 hertz saw wave. There it is. If I were in, we have a very high drive. Let's take this down for the moment. And let me just show you how broad these filters are. They're very broad. There's no Q control anywhere. This is meant to be something that touches up sounds, shape sounds generally. It's not like a surgical tool. You don't have like a Q factor you could control where you can get a lot of resonance or anything like that. It's not like that. So if we go ahead and sweep this, or not sweep it, but just change the gain or the boost at 430, which is going to live somewhere like in here, we should expect a difference in brightness on those harmonics. We cut it. There's that pocket. But you can see it goes all the way up to like 1K. This is a pretty big filter. Bring it up. Let's do the high end. Let's do 12K. So that's a huge, I know it doesn't look very big, but that's from 10 to 20K. Resonance. Oh man, you can hear that phase smearing stuff or something. I don't know what that is. It sounds nice. So anyways, that's what's going on there. Let's go ahead, let's turn off or turn back on the modeling here. Cause I mean, if you're gonna grab it, you're probably gonna want that on. So let's dive into doing something a little more interesting. So I have here this bass sound. I'm going to go ahead and turn on these other things here. They're just mostly here for just mixing purposes. And we don't need this anymore. This is just like our test tone generator. Let's bypass this for the moment. By the way, in the plugin, this is like the global bypass. It's a giant on-off switch. I feel like it's kind of evident, but just to show you. Let's bring up this. So this is what we have. We're going to be touching the bass sound. Sounds like this. Bring in the drums. So we already have some juice going on. There's already a lot of things going on. We're just going to sell the juice a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the ×2. So now we have, you know, another set of bands we can mess with. We can pick different frequencies. And we're going to go to mid side. Now, I'm going to turn the drive up just a touch, you know, just cuts. We could turn it up and down later, see how much we like that or don't like that. I'm going to pick some different ranges. So over here, I'll pick like 20, and then I'll pick like 14. I'll pick 4.6 and then 1.8. I'll pick, 430 is fine, and 82. By the way, these outer rings, you can click and drag to change them. I like clicking the labels. Now, since it's linked, they're all selected over here and they match. And if we change one, it'll change the other. If we unlink them, we could like do different things in the left and the right, or in this case, the mid and the side. And this will give us independent control, but we've selected all the same settings. That could be kind of cool. Maybe we want them to be unlinked since we're doing mid side. So we'll leave them unlinked for now. Actually, that sounds like a good idea. So let's go over to the browse parameters and we're going to look, we're going to move this over here and let's grab our different gains. So we have our high gain left and this one's the right. Do these just, oh no, they jump around. Okay, good to know. So we'll automate this and we'll automate this. I'm going to do all the mid ones next to each other so that I kind of know what they're all about. We'll automate that one. This could be kind of nuts. This is one of those things that you kind of do, and then afterwards, you decide if you like it or not. So anything with rights, actually, mid-side. Okay, so these ones that say left are going to be the mids, and these ones that say right are going to be the rights. And if I really cared, I'd color coordinate this so that all the rights are one color and all the lefts are one color. That's going to take a bunch of time. So this is going to, also the way we've done this, crap, I didn't pay attention to the order. I believe it's higher frequencies first, and then it progressively goes down. One or two of them may be flipped. Not the end of the world, but we can look at these top ones as like our high frequencies. We can even see high gain. Okay, we got H, mid gain 2, low gain 2. So on the first one, maybe let's just try being general and we'll have a high gain move in the mids. Let's actually have them, let's have the mids start out and then we'll have them dip out, come back, maybe dip out suddenly, come back, and then maybe one more. That's a little less extreme. And then we'll have the gain. And if you're really clever, you can make an inverted clip that's like linked inversely to whatever this one's doing and link the controller to that. You could do that pretty easily with just a times -1, I believe, in the link controller options when you create an automation clip. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to draw in a shape, which is how I tend to do it. So there's our side. We'll go ahead and we'll do the opposite on the sides here. Now I'm being kind of extreme. So while this is high, we'll have this go low. It's not bad to have them both high at the same time. And then this, let's have it go up, have it come down, and then pop back up. And then just for the sake of time, because these are very sweeping changes, let's have a spot where all the side kind of disappears, and then we boost it a lot at the same moment. So I'm going to add this on all of them and cut it on all of them around the same time. And then this one, we can do different things. Now the mids is where the majority of the sound lives. And ideally you'd listen to your phrase. You'd go through bit by bit, thinking about this particular range. And it takes a while, but you usually walk out with something really freaking cool. And what I like to do afterwards, which is what I'm doing here, is I follow it up with a multi-band compressor of some kind. And its job is to just re-level everything. And that makes it so that these drastic changes sort of equal out at the end, and it comes out more of a tone change than anything, because there'll definitely be some gain changes here, which would cause me to revisit this. But let's just see what this sounds like with this new addition. And let's also unbypass it because we haven't been able to hear it yet. Yeah, you can get some really cool tonal textures. This is one of my favorite things to do with EQs as well. It just sounds so cool. And then the nice thing about an analog modeled style thing is when you really punch it, it just doesn't when you hit the ceiling, it still sounds pretty good. So let's really push the drive. I'm just curious. Let's bring everything in. Now, this is probably heavy-handed. There's a few other steps I'd take after this because we're probably going to stop here. Step number one, I'd go through and automate the wet dry probably first, and possibly the drive as well. And then I would also go through and fine tune and pick and purposely try to get certain resonancy pockets or boost certain areas in the automation. I would really spend my time I'd start out maybe a little randomly and then sort of fine tune moments that I think really have potential to shine based on, whatever the MIDI's doing, or maybe there's an interesting phrase or just the resonance has come out in a way I didn't expect. I'm like, oh, I want to capitalize on that. So it's very time consuming to get something like this, but it's very rewarding when it's done because it sounds really cool. So here it is with the drums. So there's a little bit of an introduction to the PSP E27. A lot of other options, there are much more conventional uses out there, like, touching up a kick, touching up a snare, mixing. But I think this is a really cool way to sort of see what it can do. And as a color plugin, it sounds so good. So if you're looking for something to really spice up maybe a bass, you don't have to do all the frequencies. Maybe you just do the high bands. One thing that can work out really cool actually is a tremolo in the high end, and then you mix it into taste, and it can add that extra shimmer to the top without really touching the low end, so you can keep those relationships, especially if you've tuned them to work with your kick. You can sort of leave that stuff alone. If you have any questions about this, feel free to let me know. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.